and I'm delighted to introduce Mayor of Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, to formally open this members' meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Don. Good evening, everybody. Here we are at this magnificent community-owned venue, Stretford Public Hall, and it's my great pleasure to open this AGM of Co-ops UK. You all are getting very used to hearing a phrase at the moment, build back better. But has anyone actually set out what it means? Build back better has got to mean at least one thing. It can't be business as usual, because business as usual hasn't worked for people. We've all of us lived through an era where we were told that the market would solve everything, that private business would solve everything, not just be good at running their own businesses, but running public services, everything. But where has that got us as a society? It's got us to a point where during this pandemic, it was left to a Manchester-based footballer to remind the government that we need to do more to feed our children. It's left us in a position during a pandemic where people working in social care were not paid enough to self-isolate if they needed to. And consequently, we saw what happened to them and to others as a result of that. That's where this thinking has got us. If you go back 35 years ago, Margaret Thatcher told people here that if the market took over our buses, they would get better, they would get cheaper, there would be more services in every community. Well, what's happened? The exact opposite, the exact opposite. People have lost services, fares have just gone up and up and up, the number of passengers has gone down and down and down. The market hasn't worked for people. It hasn't delivered what people claimed it would. So build back better needs to mean no more business as usual. It means doing things differently, as we like to say here in Manchester, but also doing things much better, making things work for everybody. We've lived through a pandemic here where people have lived very different lives. There are some people, as I've said, have been out at work and not even able to go home if they've been ill because they wouldn't be paid if they did so. We've got others who have been at home and have been very well looked after, but it's brought over how divided we are as a society. Here in Greater Manchester, we've had a difficult time because there are many people who have low-paid, insecure employment, and they go back to a private rented sector that runs without standards and allows landlords to take in all of the money and not reinvest that in those communities. And consequently, we have housing that doesn't support people's physical health or actually their mental health. And let's be clear about this. This is the pandemic that is coming after the pandemic. A pandemic of mental health where people haven't been able to support themselves properly through this period and now are going to face really challenging times as we come through. So something different is needed, and that something different is community and cooperative ownership. And it's why I'm really proud to be opening this AGM here in this magnificent venue, but more importantly, here in the home of the cooperative movement, Greater Manchester. We need to go back to what those pioneers were telling us, which is if we run organizations in the interest for everybody, we will all be stronger, we will all benefit. Let's have a situation where we have transport that works for everybody, that's affordable for everybody, where everybody can afford to feed their kids even in the school holidays. Let's make sure that the generation of young people coming through realize there is a better way of doing things, and we inspire them to be the next generation of cooperators. I think the future is there to be built. And as you know, Greater Manchester always likes to be at the forefront of change for the better. I am proud to be the Labour and cooperative mayor of Greater Manchester, and I take that second part of my title very seriously indeed. I've just run on a manifesto that is committed to community wealth building, and creating a unit in our growth company to expand the number of co-ops and social enterprises within our city region. For us, that is Build Back Better. And I don't want to hear this phrase anymore unless people are prepared to spell out what it means. And what it can't mean is more of the same. We need change. We need change in the interest of the residents of this city region to make it more equal, where everyone can have a good home, a good secure job, access to affordable transport, a more livable community, good lives for all. That's what we stand for here in Greater Manchester. We know our friends in the co-op movement can help us deliver that. We look forward to working in partnership with you as we rebuild and as we recover from the time that we've been through. But I am optimistic about what lies ahead for the cooperative movement in the next few years. And I look forward to working with Co-ops UK under the fantastic dynamic leadership of Rose Marley, a great friend of ours in our city region, done so much to drive change within Greater Manchester. She's now driving change for the cooperative movement nationally. I'm so proud of Rose. I'm so grateful to all of you for everything you're doing in your communities. Pleased to be able to be here today to welcome you virtually, digitally to Stretford and to Greater Manchester, and ready to move on to better things with you all as we do build back from this situation that we've been in, and we show there is a better way of doing things. So I will leave it there. Don, I think I will now hand back to you.
Thank you, Andy. That was wonderful stuff, stirring stuff, and thank you for being such a good friend to the co-op. I'll start by introducing myself. My name's Don Morris, and I'm Co-operatives UK Chair. With me is Rose Marley, who we just heard about, our new CEO, and Zena King on my left is our Society Secretary. We'll hear shortly from Ross, Michael Shepherd, Head of Finance, and a number of other directors, some here and some scattered across the country. I need to let you know that the meeting is being recorded, and that will help us in producing the minutes. I've also had confirmation and can confirm that we are quorate and able to begin the formal business of this meeting. But before we do that, Zena will explain our approach to ensuring members can vote and have their say in the meeting.
To start with a bit of housekeeping to make sure everyone's able to participate online. So it'll work best if you've got your device on speaker view, if you've got that option. So you should be able to see both the slides and the person speaking. Most devices will allow you to change the ratio of that if it's somebody who's not here today that's speaking, if they're speaking from home. It's worth mentioning that some devices might have a short delay when switching between cameras if it's somebody who's contributing from home today. So don't worry about that. Things will catch up fairly quickly if it looks like there's a delay. You can use the chat function, but that's just to communicate with our staff here at Stretford Public Hall. So if you've got any procedural issues you need to raise, you can do that. Unfortunately, you're not able to interact with other attendees using the chat function today. We will be using the Q&A function to enable members to ask questions at the AGM. When we get to those Q&A slots, if you type your question in using the Q&A box, and either you'll get a written response from Gareth, our membership officer who's here in the room, or I'll read your question aloud to be answered by the relevant person. All attendees will be able to see all of the questions that are being asked, and you can upvote a question using the like button that will appear if you think that it's an important question that should be answered in the room. Lastly, when our directors propose resolutions, we'll need a seconder. So if you're happy to second a resolution, if you could raise your virtual hand when prompted, you'll find that under the participants button in the webinar, and I'll be able to confirm who seconded a resolution before we move to the vote. Okay, back to you, Don.
Thanks, Zena. So let's get things going then. I will be taking the notice of the meeting as read. Everyone should have access to the AGM notice and the annual report, along with the full pack of papers for the meeting from the links that were emailed to your chosen address. If you need to access them now, they're on uk.coop/AGM. All of today's resolutions require a simple majority of members to vote for them, and we don't at this stage envisage needing a weighted ballot. Members can request this, and we'd explain more at that point. but I'm assuming that that isn't going to happen. The resolutions will be proposed using an on-screen poll, and we will use a one member, one vote approach. The first formal item of business is the approval of minutes of the AGM held on the 19th of June 2020. I will be proposing this. Can I ask for a seconder?
Yep, I can see that Harry Kearney has seconded that motion.
Great, thanks. So the resolution is now on the screen.
You'll get, sorry, instructions to vote will come on your screen first. That's my
beg your
fault.
pardon, sorry.
So in the same way as last year, we'll be using a poll. So the poll will appear on your screen for 45 seconds. During that time, you need to click on for, against, or abstain, and then press submit. When the poll closes, the results will be shown on screen, but I'll also declare the result of that poll to the meeting. So the 45 seconds will start as soon as the poll appears on your screen. And that should start any second now. There we go.
We could do with some music.
Yeah, you didn't realise 45 seconds was so long,
quite a
did
long
you?
time, isn't it? 45 seconds with silence.
Hopefully everyone is casting their votes now and the poll will close shortly. Okay, and that's voting finished, and we'll just wait for the results to appear on screen. And I can confirm that that resolution has passed. The minutes have been approved.
Great. So we're going to move on to the next item of business, and that relates to the 2020 annual report and financial statements. We're going to hear from Michael Shepherd, Head of Finance, and then our audit partner at KPMG, Will Baker, and finally from our CEO, Rose Marley. We'll hear from Michael and Will, and then we'll take live questions, and we'll have another opportunity for questions after Rose has spoken. So Michael Shepherd will start by outlining the financial results from 2020.
Good afternoon, everybody. It gives me great pleasure to present the financial statements for Co-operatives UK for the year ending 31st of December 2020. There'll be time for questions once you've heard from me and our auditor, Will Baker, later in the AGM. There are a few areas of our finance that needs extra attention this year to ensure we are compliant with UK accounting standards. Partly, this is in relation to the impact of the global pandemic. It also reflects the need to provide additional information around our growing portfolio of withdrawable shares held at Co-operatives UK. We are immensely proud of our pioneering work in this field of community shares. One element of this work is the Booster programme. This was a pilot we started several years ago designed to support organisations undertaking community share offers by Co-operatives UK investing funds through the purchase of withdrawable shares as an institutional investor. We now have 4.5 million invested in over 35 community initiatives. See page 57 for full details of these. This is cooperation in action. These withdrawable equity investments are paid for entirely by third parties and not Co-operatives UK directly. An example of this is a charitable organisation called the Power to Change. The organisations that receive investments go through a rigorous application process, and the investments they receive in equity from Co-operatives UK match the amount they raise from the members via community shares. As we've heard at previous AGMs, these investments are making a real difference in local communities across England, and we're committed to continue this important work. The impact of these investments, however, is that make our financial statements a bit more complicated for our members to interpret and understand. As I've said, we're given the funds to invest, but once the investment has been made, it sits on our balance sheet and we hold the shares in each of the organisations. In an effort to ensure greater clarity and transparency of our accounts, we've changed this year to a column format, and we have separated our core activities from the community shares investments. I hope you will agree this does go some way to achieving better clarity. Each year, as part of our compliance with accounting practice, we have to review all the investments to identify any indications that the investments might not recover its original cost. This is standard accounting practice. We do this by looking at the financial health of each organisation that we hold shares in. These investments are in small but growing organisations, each with its own financial year end and accounting practices in place. We found it difficult to get precise financial information as at the 31st of December each year, which makes it harder to assess their financial health. From the financial information available to us, we have no specific concerns about any of the organisations we've invested in. However, we believe that the various pandemic recovery and support schemes available to organisations may be masking some of the long-term financial impacts of these businesses. It's not easy to estimate the severity of these consequences, and the pandemic may have affected some more than others. As a result, I work with our Audit and Risk Committee to make an estimate on their impact by way of a general provision of 10% against the portfolio value of these investments as a whole. This has led to a paragraph in the independent audit report qualifying the opinion provided by KPMG. The reason for this is because we have not been able to adequately evidence the basis for the assessments of the carrying value of these equity investments at our year end. Generally, this is because we've not been able to access up-to-date financial information for all the organisations. However, we are confident that the information we do have has allowed us to make an informed and prudent decision to apply a portfolio-wide impairment. The Co-operatives UK Audit and Risk Committee and the full board have reviewed this qualification and given it the scrutiny you would expect, and have accepted the report with this inclusion. We've already started the process of ensuring that over the next year we will develop improved processes for obtaining financial information from the organisations involved in the share programme to ensure that we can evidence any decision made on the assessment of the carrying value of these investments going forward. We remain committed to this fantastic work and comply fully with accounting standards and our audit requirements. We've included information on the risks and actions Co-operatives UK have taken in relation to this pandemic, and we will continue to monitor the effects going forward. I would like to move on to the actual data contained in the report and highlight a few key numbers. As part of your joining pack today, for today's AGM, you should have received the annual report. This is a picture of the front cover. The document is 66 pages and covers our work and our accounts to the end of 2020. During the year, there was a few changes in our accounting procedures and processes. While the majority of our staff work away from Holyoke House, we installed a new payroll system and a new accounting system which allowed all of our accounting functions to be processed away from the office. Page 3 to 5 of the statements are from our chair, Don Morris, our new CEO, Rose Marley. Page 6 is our performance against our operating plan. Page 7 to 20 talks about our work to promote, develop and unite cooperatives. Page 21 to 27 talks about our governance and our board. The financial statements start on page 28 and finish on page 64, with page 65 being a report on our gender pay. Page 29 to 40 gives you information on risk, director's responsibility, and the independent audit report, as previously discussed. I want to start on page 41 of this report, which is now laid out in column format, giving a clear picture of our core activities. In terms of those core activities, we made a surplus before tax of £75,000 compared to 35 surplus in 2019. This ensures we're always using members' subscriptions and other income effectively to provide good value and continue to be in a positive position to provide future value to our members. Income was down year on year by approximately £10,000 and expenditure was down by 43 as we successfully adjusted our activity to reflect new ways of working, ensuring members received the support they needed. Staff were able to work from home while Holyoke House was kept running and open. When we move to the next column, booster investments, this year we invested £595,000 in 11 societies to bring our total investment to 2.4 million. As previously stated, we took the decision to make a general impairment provision of 10%. That's £240,000 for 2020 and reflects how we think the pandemic may hit these organisations. Moving on to the balance sheet is also in column format on page 42. Year on year, we've improved our reserve position by £52,000. Debtors year on year is up by £527,000 due to a December invoice for funding for programmes of work, which only became payable in January 2021 and has subsequently been paid. Credit is also high. This is due to deferred VAT payments and increased deferred income. We are proud of our record of paying our creditors promptly, and we have decreased from £108,000 creditors in December 2019 to 51,000 at the end of this year. The cash flow statement and statement of changes in equity on pages 43 and 44 and in line with expectations and have no cause for concern. Page 45 to 48 gives you the accounting policies currently in operation. Moving to page 49, which gives greater details of our income and expenditure. Starting with income, all our income streams have been remarkably resilient during 2020, and on current data, 2021 seems to be in line with expectations also. Moving on to page 49, which is expenditure. We continue to review our expenditure, regular interviews, and ensure value for money in all our expenditure lines. Meetings and travel costs have been the major savings this year, as you would expect, but we've also benefited from reduced utility expenditure in Holyoke House while keeping our current cohort of tenants in the building. Several tenants have reduced their footprint in Holyoke House in 2021, but other tenants have been brought on board to partially offset this income loss, and we will continue to ensure that vacant space at Holyoke House is occupied. Last slide, I promise. Page 50 gives a summary of the project work done by Co-operatives UK Development Unit and continues to be a strong part of our activities. Our staff delivered a number of funding pieces of work which align to our mission and provide value support for the current and future cooperative movement. We've seen a rise of £72,000 in our income year on year and £54,000 increase in the contribution projects offered to co-work. Funding for projects is generally received in advance, with project income being held on the balance sheet as deferred income, and it currently stands at £1 million. And this is recognised in value in line with the cost of work performed to date. Page 51 to 60 gives extra detail support the primary statements that I've laid out briefly for you. As per the accounts and summary stated, this concludes my presentation to the AGM of the 2020 statutory accounts, and rest assured my team and I will continue to look after your money. Finally, I would personally like to thank the board and the whole staff team for all their hard work over the 12 months and look forward to Co-op UK and the movement continuing to strive. Thank you for your patience and for listening. At this point, I'd like to pass you over to our audit partner, Will Baker from KPMG, who has been appointed as our audit partner. Will.
Thanks, Michael. Good evening, everybody. Our audit report is set out on pages 35 to 39 of the financial statements, and it was signed on the 10th of May, 2021. I'm going to read out extracts from that audit report. Starting on page 35, it's qualified audit opinion. We've audited the financial statements of Co-operatives UK Limited, the society, for the year ended 31 December 2020, which comprised the income statement, balance sheet, cash flow statement, statement of changes in equity and related notes, including the accounting policies in Note 1. In our opinion, except for the possible effects of the matter described in the basis for qualified opinion section of our audit report, the financial statements give a true and fair view in accordance with UK accounting standards, including FRS 102, the financial reporting standards applicable in the UK and Republic of Ireland. Of the state of the Society's affairs as at 31 December 2020, and of the income and expenditure of the Society for the year that ended, and comply with the requirements of the Co-operative and Community Benefit Societies Act 2014. Basis for qualified opinion. At 31 December 2020, the Society has an equity investment balance of £2,161,988, net of impairment charges of £240,221 recorded in the year. Within this equity investment balance are equity investments with a carrying amount of £1,543,667 at 31 December 2020, for which an impairment of £240,221 has been recorded in the year, in relation to which the directors were unable to provide us with sufficient appropriate audit evidence to support the recoverable amount. We were unable to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence regarding the recoverable amount of the year's investments at 31 December 2020 and the related impairment charge by performing other audit procedures. Any adjustments would have a consequential effect on the Society's net assets as at that date and also on its expenditure for the year then ended. We conducted our audit in accordance with international standards on auditing, UK, ICES UK, and applicable law. Our responsibilities are described below. We have fulfilled our ethical responsibilities under and are independent of the Society in accordance with UK ethical requirements, including the FRC ethical standard. We believe that the audit evidence we have obtained is a sufficient and appropriate basis for our qualified audit opinion. We then go on to discuss going concern, and our opinion is on page 36. And I'll just read out the conclusion. Our conclusions based on this work is that we consider that the director's use of the going concern basis of accounting in the preparation of the financial statements is appropriate. We have not identified and concur with the director's assessment that there is not a material uncertainty related to events or conditions that individually or collectively may cast significant doubt on the Society's ability to continue as a going concern for the going concern period. I'm now just going to flick to page 38. Matters on which we are required to report by exception. In respect solely of the limitation on our work relating to equity investments described above, we have not obtained the information and explanations that we considered necessary for the purpose of our audit. We were unable to determine whether the Society has kept proper books of account, and we were unable to determine whether the Society has maintained a satisfactory system of control over its transactions. Under the Co-operative and Community Benefit Societies Act 2014, we are also required to report to you if, in our opinion, the financial statements are not in agreement with the Society books of account. We have nothing to report in this respect. And on page 39 is my signature dated the 10th of May 2021. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Will. Michael and Will are both available at home to take questions on the annual report and financial statements. We also have Robin Feith with us. Robin is on our board of directors and is the Chief Executive of the Building Societies Association. He will be taking questions you might have about the process the board has undertaken to scrutinise the financial statements following the audit qualification. Can I ask that you please type your questions using the Q&A button?
Thanks, Don. We've got one question in already, quick off the mark. That's from Tim Coomer at Co-op and Community Finance. And this question will be, it's got two elements to it. So this will be going to Robin, but then also to Eddie, who is the chair of our Audit and Risk Committee, who I think can answer the latter part of this question. So Tim says, as I understand it, the qualified audit opinion of the accounts relates to the seemingly arbitrary 10% provision you have put in the accounts for the booster investment portfolio. The auditors obviously saw this as a problem. Are you confident that the level of monitoring / research you undertook to arrive at 10% and what was this monitoring research undertaken? I do appreciate it's been particularly difficult to get realistic trading and survival figures from the co-ops that were invested in, but 10% seems quite high. And related to this, are Co-operatives UK still the best placed organisation to hold this investment pot? So I'll go to Robin for the first part and then to Eddie, the Chair of Audit and Risk Committee, for the second part. Robin?
Thank you, Zena. So look, can I start first of all by going back to Michael's really helpful comments and explanations, because he went into quite a lot of detail, really reflecting the whole process in summary that we went through to get to the year end. And let's start also by ensuring that we remember just how important this community booster program is. We were hearing during the Congress this morning, and indeed in the venue that you are all in today, just how important the support from the booster program is to the successful community programs such as and the whole range of these projects. In terms of the work they do within communities and within the cooperative movement. So there were two specific issues, and Will may want to add a little bit more explanation to this if I'm not sufficiently accurate here. But there were two issues at the end of the year relating to the carrying value of these shares. The first is that accounting standards requires the assessment of impairment to be done at the year end, and therefore with financial information that's very close to the year end, if not exactly at that date. And the information we have gathered in Co-ops UK has been throughout the year, so some of that information may be 9 or 10 months old at the year end. So that is the first bit, and despite a huge amount of work by Michael, it was not possible within within the limitations of these investments and the people who are running these community businesses to provide that really up to date information out of their own reporting cycles, so different from their own reporting cycles. So the second thing that the board did, and through the audit committee we looked at, was said, well, what could we do here, recognizing that COVID has been such a disruptor to so many activities this year, and clearly to some of these businesses. So although none of them were actually showing signs of impairment on the latest information we had, but recognizing that some of that information was quite old, we took the view that putting a 10% general provision in against the whole portfolio would be prudent. It's not arbitrary. It is a judgment, but it is a round judgment. So there's which is why we felt that 10% was appropriate. Clearly, if that's too much, then in subsequent years it will come out again, and if it proves to be too little, then in subsequent years we will need to increase that provision. And we will only see that as we see these businesses trade. But I was taken also just by one of the comments that we started out on the Congress today, that 92% of community share businesses that have been founded since 2012 are still trading today. And I think that sort of demonstrates the real durability of these great these great activities. So that, I hope that answers your question, Tim, in two parts. One, how did we get, how the difficulties, the challenges we all faced in trying to determine whether there was a specific impairment, and therefore a judgment estimate that we made that will, in order to recognise that something is likely to have happened that we have not yet been able to identify.
Audit Committee to answer the second part of that question. Eddie will be answering the question, are Cooperatives UK still best placed organisation to hold this pot of investments?
Thanks, Zena, and thank you for the question. I believe that Co-ops UK is the appropriate and the safest place at this time to hold these investments. There's a team who monitor the performance of each investment, and there's a panel in place which agree the investments. So the audit and committee, the audit and risk committee are satisfied that we are the appropriate place to hold these investments.
Thank you for that answer, Eddie. I've got a question that is here on the chat rather than the Q&A. So apologies that other attendees can't see this question. But this is for Michael, and it's from David Smith, and he has asked what income we received from HMG's furlough scheme during this accounting period. So that's a question for Michael.
Okay. In 2020, we received £23,000.
That's a to the point answer there, Michael. Thank you for that. At the moment, I'm not seeing any other open questions. I'll just leave it for another minute in case anybody wants to ask another question on the annual report and financial statements. Nope, it doesn't look like there are any other questions. Thank you, Tim and David, for your questions there. Over to you, Dom.
Okay, thank you very much. And thanks to Robin and Eddie for those replies. Thank you. I'd now like to introduce to her first Cooperatives UK AGM, our new CEO, Rose Marley. Rose is going to outline our impact in 2020 and our plans to rebuild together. Over to you, Rose.
Thank you very much, Don, and thank you for joining us all online at the AGM this evening, especially as it has been my very first Congress today and first AGM, as Don says. For those of you that don't know, I started at Cooperatives UK as the CEO just this January, and in that very short time, I've been really, really impressed by the Co-ops UK team and become incredibly proud of what they have achieved. So I am delighted to share with you some of the insights into what has been happening across 2020. And if we can get the first slides, please. I will also be sharing an insight into the future strategy of Cooperatives UK. So 2020 was not the year we expected. Co-ops UK was 150 years old, and a big festival of cooperation in our spiritual home, Rochdale, had been planned. But then, of course, the pandemic hit. And the team went into immediate action, trying to understand the problems that our cooperative members were facing. They discovered that half of all co-ops were reporting cash flow problems instantly, that 40% were furloughed, and 70% of our members were demonstrating a real concern for the future of their businesses. So based on that action research, the Co-ops UK repurposed and pivoted themselves online for events and training. They also focused on the critical needs for guidance and advice. So that included things like, for example, COVID-safe workplaces, clarity on business support grants and loans, and indeed supported 330 co-ops directly with specific advice, and even managed to open 66 new co-ops in that period. One of the other things that the Co-ops UK team did was to work out how to hold an AGM online, both from a point of legislation and technically. Hopefully that's going well today. And there was quite a lot of financial guidance as well that was required. In addition, Co-ops UK managed to work with the Cooperative Bank to deliver an incorporation tool to make it easier to incorporate into a co-op online with this Hive. Again, 31 co-ops within the first 3 months through that process. There was also emergency funding that was required, and Co-ops UK managed to support 1.1 million into the cooperative sector and enabled and supported £5 million support package with our partners Power to Change, Locality and the Plunkett Foundation, of which 13 of our members received £218,000. We also secured £600,000 from the Architectural Heritage Fund to enable people to use the community share capital to build back better in the recovery, and £440,000 additionally from Power to Change to support the recovery of organisations. The Cooperative Bank also confirmed support, £400,000 worth of support to add to the 1.3 million already committed to the business development, the Hive, for another year. And Co-ops UK team also worked through a pathway of support to enable our members to find their way through COVID. We continued to campaign and support for our cooperatives and to fight for our co-ops because the government response often failed to include co-ops. So we worked with Social Enterprise UK and the wider sector, lobbying for specialist support packages that really met the needs of our members. And we also ensured that societies were included in fast-track reforms and AGM flexibility legislation. So impressive that the team also managed to carry on business as usual and fighting for co-ops and lobbying. We're able to bring tax relief to housing co-ops. Co-ops are specifically referenced in the social value procurement framework. We worked with HMRC to make life easier for companies that had turned into societies, and we campaigned alongside 577 co-ops. In terms of our lobbying, 2020, we continued to make case for co-ops to be fair and equitable for all our futures, and we produced a paper, We Are the Rebuilders, for Co-op Fortnight 2020, which was received really well as a cross-party support. This enabled building co-ops into the COVID recovery plans. We also produced Revive and Thrive for a fairer, stronger Scotland, adopted again cross-party in their manifestos. Now, local and city regions, local government, city regions and councils really are best placed to deliver co-ops to help build this democratic economy and to do what Andy Burnham referred to earlier and build back better. So we have strong relationships in Greater Manchester and Greater London, and that's our re-elected mayors pledging support directly to co-ops in their manifestos. With councils from North Ayrshire to Plymouth proactively nurturing this democratic economy, community wealth building is really beginning to take root, as we heard earlier from the Preston model. And this week we announced the first regional hub, Sheffield City Region, alongside our partners, the Employee Ownership Association, with a campaign to promote worker co-ops and employee-owned businesses. So we also carried on promoting co-ops more generally. We secured 300 pieces of media coverage, launched a new podcast. We engaged 12 million people with our social media. We put together a comprehensive community shares document. And as if that wasn't enough, Co-ops UK also managed to rebuild our own website in that period. In terms of uniting co-ops, our work around diversity, inclusion and equity was brought into sharp focus by the Black Lives Matter movement. And although there's still a lot of work to do, we've made a really good start. We produced 45 events for 1,300 online delegates, and we worked closely with the infrastructure organisations, including college, heritage, press and party, to create what we are calling a new era of cooperation. So that was a little bit of a whistle stop about some of the achievements from 2020. And now we're looking to where next, do we really begin to build back better? Well, to take stock of where we are now, you can see on the slides that there's a real challenge in terms of the independent co-ops in the UK. There's a real challenge there that we are at risk of being stagnant, and we really do want to use this opportunity to be able to grow the movement. So how do we do that? Well, we've launched a survey in 2021, and the results will be out on Monday from the Co-op Economy Survey. We asked questions including how co-ops responded to the pandemic and what challenges were faced. And without giving away too many secrets, you'll be really pleased to read in the report on Monday that being a co-op in a pandemic is no bad thing. So as we enter now what I believe to be a pivotal decade for mankind, because prior to the pandemic, we were already in the cusp of the fourth industrial revolution. The pandemic accelerated tech and digital, but we are really going to be relying on tech in ways we've never considered as the world joins together. The rollout of, for example, 5G technologies, the Internet of Things, AI as a service are going to transform the way we live and work. We believe it is essential that cooperative values are built into that evolving tech, and also by applying the principles of cooperation to app development, it will remove the exploitation and monopoly that we're currently seeing in this disruptive tech space. Already, we're producing some really interesting platform co-ops that are owned and controlled by their users. And this is something we're really investing in. So again, the Co-op Bank has enabled us some support with the Unfound Accelerator, where 6 weeks, 10 teams all work together to enable their platform cooperatives. We've already got courier companies and language schools, for example, and the second round of that, so we'll be looking for the next 10 teams, is the 1st of July. So if you've got a brilliant idea for a cooperative and you've no idea how to turn that into a piece of tech or app, please do apply, because you don't need to be a techie to do that. But it really is critically important that the cooperative movement are at the forefront of programming that technological change. Again, for those of you that were at Congress today, it'll be no surprise for you to hear that our future strategy will also focus on young people. We saw today some brilliant speakers, and we saw how genuinely aligned they are to the values of the cooperative movement and the appetite they have to have a stake and to have a say in where they live, work, and what they consume. Cooperatives have a really unique USP. We've talked about it at Congress today. But all co-ops distribute power through one member, one vote, and anchor wealth in the communities they operate in. It really will help the country to build back better, and indeed the world. But there is a challenge. The co-op group in particular were always, the first in the marketplace to be that ethical and sustainable business. And now people are realizing that that is what is required to build a good business. So there's lots of marketing around that kind of language. And this particular organisation, Mobile Phone Network, GiftGaff, had caught my attention because I did indeed think they were a co-op. The mobile network run by you with their charity are making a difference together. Sadly, it transpired that they are owned by a major global conglomerate, and the mobile network run by you does actually mean that you get to choose your own data plan. But how does the individual on the street make any form of distinction between that type of language and what we say and what we do? So there really is a challenge in our marketing. and it is something that we need to tackle as part of our new strategy. It's time to make our point of difference heard in this new era of cooperation. And talking of new era, again, what you will have seen at Congress today was the opposite of 28 men. It was 4, 5 women all on a stage together. And it's really important, you know, it's demonstrating how inclusive the movement is and how that women who are at the forefront of some of the infrastructure organisations are really helping to shape that change. So I will end now with our Cooperative Fortnight campaign film, and the call to action this year is to join a co-op. So before I take any questions, let's watch the video and find out why.
By selling second-hand clothes, our co-op supports music lessons for the local community.
In our co-op, you're not a cog in the machine. We own the company.
We work together, learn together, and build our business together.
As a director, it feels great to be running a business where we're paying a decent rate, and our seasonal freelancers are paid the same as us.
Run by the members, for the members, we have more power together. Having a say in the business makes me feel more secure.
Being a member means that I have a say in which local causes we support.
As co-owners, we all have different strengths and weaknesses, but working as a team, the pieces of the jigsaw just fit together.
Hello, is that Mrs. Jones? With the deaf community and the interpreters working together, we have a sign language service that benefits us all. We're all involved in making decisions and things are changing for the better.
This is our co-op.
This is our co-op.
This is our co-op.
This is our co-op.
This is our co-op. This is our co-op.
Anyone can join a co-op, and millions of people in the UK are already members. Are you?
Okay, thanks, Rose. Thanks for that. As before, we'll take any questions using the Q&A button on your screen.
Just give members a second to type those and then I'll pass them on to you, Rose. I'm assuming there's people feverishly typing really complicated questions for you. Fingers crossed. Feel like I'm maybe going to be running a tombola saying, come on, one more question. Not got any open questions at the moment. If anybody is debating whether or not to ask a question, then feel free to jump in. If anyone in the room wants to ask a question in the meantime, you're welcome to.
I think that was because my presentation was so comprehensive, Zena, or because the cooperative movement is so incredibly supportive of my new role that they don't need to ask any, there's no questions for us.
Absolutely.
There is somebody has commented that the video is great, which is good.
Excellent.
There has been one question, sorry, it's also in the chat, not in the questions, so I just need to look around that. David Smith has asked for a breakdown of data in relation to the nations and regions in the UK. He's been given a written answer by Gareth Wright, so now we can see if you give the same answer to the one Gareth gave about what might be happening next week.
Okay, so you want to break down on...
He's asked about a breakdown on figures for nations and regions.
Figures for the development of co-ops?
Yeah, I think in relation to the work we've done. So Gareth has pointed him to the fact that the co-op economy is being launched next week and he'll be able to get
so yeah,
the data that he wants.
That is exactly all the questions that we've put out there and developed. I mean, I think what's really been interesting is looking at the wider opportunity in areas like, for example, Scotland. You know, when we talk about in the previous COP economy, we had a £38 billion sector, and only about 1 billion of that was attributed to Scotland. But Scotland also has the highest cooperatives per capita, so you can see there's work to do there, but again, it's also demonstrating that we are really resonating in this new era.
Thank you. I've got a question from Catherine Parish. She has asked, how does Co-ops UK feel about the environmental movement, and how will it be supporting co-ops to become more green?
Well, Catherine, I don't know if you managed to attend Congress today, but if not, it will be on our YouTube Live, and that's exactly what, you know, Chris Packham was talking about today in terms of the social campaigning, and he's put a challenge out there also in his article in Co-op News about co-ops taking over a lot more of, for example, the sustainable farming and renewable energy to enable the cooperative model to make greater impact. So we feel that, you know, it's a really strong model, but that we could be doing a lot more of it. So that's a real challenge to the movement to enable that.
Thank you, that's great. And a question from Sean Fensom. He says, it's a great point that you made about GIFCAF. How do we tackle this version of greenwashing?
It is a great point, Sean, and you know, it's a real challenge actually, because you know, it's the rise of conscious capitalism, and that's not to take away how valuable it is when a traditional business format that is owned through private wealth, through their CSR, for example, or gifting to charity, or maybe even going as far as constituting things like caring about the sustainability of the planet in their constitutions in something like a B Corp. But the difference is, and Claire's actually the centre, the local and economic studies have got this brilliant graph that demonstrates when a company has purpose and then also its ownership, and you get the real generative wealth, the wealth that stays actually in the community is highest when the purpose is highest and the ownership is more community based, and the extractive wealth is in those private organisations. So you do a really great example of that is an organisation like The Body Shop, which is an amazing business which has done so much for our planet in terms of ethics and sustainability. But you know, they are on the Brazilian stock exchange, and that wealth has been extracted out of the UK. So I think it's twofold, Sean, and that's quite a complex answer I've just given. That, you know, like say the average individual on the street who's time poor and maybe not that bothered is not going to take the time and attention to listen, but we can maybe do that through longer pieces of marketing. But also we think we need to find a way to be communicating that difference more effectively in all our comms going forward, and it will form an important part of our strategy. So the truth is, Sean, we don't know yet, we're still working through it, but we understand that it needs to happen, and that's the important thing right now.
Thanks for that, Rose. I don't think we've got any more questions at the moment. I'll just give 1 second in case anybody wants to ask a final question before we move on. Nope. I think that's all the questions answered, Rose. Thank you so much for that.
Okay, so thank you for those questions and thanks for the answers, Rose. Following those presentations, I move that the members receive the annual report and financial statements together with the report of the auditors for the year ended the 31st of December 2020. Can I get a seconder?
Yep, I can confirm that Liam McLeod has seconded that.
Thank you. The resolution is will be in a second on your screen for you to cast your votes. Just waiting for that to come up. Okay, so on the screen for the vote, you have 45 seconds to place your vote. And again, 45 seconds seems an awful long time.
Just when you're in a big empty room. And the 45 seconds should have finished now. So any second now we'll be able to see the results of that poll. And I can confirm that that motion has been carried. Thanks, Dawn.
Great, thank you. Eddie Thorne, Chair of the Audit and Risk Committee, will put forward our next resolution.
Thank you, Dawn. Good evening, fellow co-operators, and greetings from Edinburgh. You will see from the AGM papers that the board is asking members to approve the reappointment of KPMG as our auditors for the next financial year. I would like to give some context to this proposal in advance of asking you to vote. The Audit and Risk Committee ensures that we follow best governance practice with regards to the rotation of audit partners and re-tendering for the entire audit provision. We are proposing the appointment of KPMG to act as our auditors for the coming year and in the period between now and our next AGM. I beg your pardon, we are proposing the appointment of KPMG to act as our auditors for the coming year, and in the period between now and our next AGM, we will be completing an audit tender. The committee will be working with the Society General to create an audit tender process which focuses both on ensuring we can meet statutory requirements for reporting to members and the regulator, but also one that requires providers to consider their alignment with the ethics and principles of our movement. I would emphasise that this will be an open tender process. We will not exclude any auditor from submitting an expression of interest. However, we will ensure that the tender is circulated to as many smaller audit firms as possible. In fact, if you have a recommendation for a firm of auditors that you would like to be specifically contacted, then please email our secretary, Zena, after this meeting. At next year's AGM, the chair of the Audit and Risk Committee will report back on the audit tender process, as well as making a proposal to appoint an auditor. In the meantime, members are asked to reappoint KPMG LLP as auditors from the conclusion of the meeting until the conclusion of the next annual general meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Eddie. Does anyone have any questions? Again, please use the Q&A button once again.
No questions at the moment. I know there was an earlier question, but I think Eddie's speech, as Gareth pointed out to them, will have covered the question that the member had earlier. Just give a few more minutes in case anyone's got any questions on that proposed resolution. Here we go. I've got a question here from Kath Muller that I think is probably one that I will need to answer. And that question is, if we were to vote no, what would the alternative be? So in this situation, Kath, if the members don't pass the resolution that's proposing the appointment of KPMG for the next year, then we would leave this meeting and we wouldn't have an auditor in place. We would have to immediately try and complete a tender for another auditor to fill that vacancy in order that we could get the current statements from this financial year audited. So it would mean leaving us for a period without an auditor in post, a very short period, whilst we tried to work to make sure that we had the cover that we required. So yeah, that's the situation we would be in if members don't agree to reappoint KPMG today. I have got a question here from Mike Rudge, which I will ask Eddie to answer. And he has asked whether we run an audit tender process each year. Eddie?
Thank you, Zena, and thank you for the question. No, we don't.
Thanks, Eddie. Yeah, we follow best practice in terms of the timings for our audit tender processes, and we're not required to do that every year. The requirement is every 10 years. We're doing it slightly earlier than that. So Mike has asked a follow-up question as to why we're doing one this year. So it's best practice to rotate your audit partner periodically every 5 years, off the top of my head, and to actually tender for your audit provision every 10 years. We are coming up to the point where we'd be required to do that to comply with best practice. And so that's why we go out to an open tender, just to make sure that we're working with an auditor who is sufficiently independent from Co-operatives UK as an organisation in order to be able to provide that independence and objectivity for the auditing process. There is concerns raised around that when you have an auditor who's been in post for a very long period of time, and particularly where there isn't a change of the actual individual leading the audit process. So that's why we ensure that we are following best practice in when we do those audit retenders. I don't have any other questions at the moment. Apologies that I've answered most of those, but let's let Eddie off the hook a bit.
That's absolutely fine. As long as someone answers the questions, we're happy. So thank you. I'm going to move that Eddie has now proposed the reappointment of KPMG as auditors. Can I get a seconder?
Russell Gill has seconded that.
Thank you. So the resolution will be on your screens for you to cast your votes. You have 45 seconds to place your votes.
The resolution is up now.
Thank you. 45 seconds.
And that resolution will disappear from your screen shortly, and we'll now collate the results. And I confirm that that resolution has passed by a majority of 85% of members voting. So KPMG are reappointed as our auditor for the next financial year. Thank you.
Okay, great. So we're moving on now. So our next agenda item is for the advisory vote of members. This is explained in the notice for this meeting, and I'll hand over to Ross Hodgson, Chair of the Remuneration, Appointments and Succession Committee, to make the proposal.
Hello everyone. So hopefully everyone muted there, because that was causing me some worry as we built up to this. So as Don has introduced, my name is Ross Hodgson. I'm the chair of the Co-operatives UK Remuneration Subcommittee. The first thing to say on this part of the AGM is you may have noticed that we're reporting slightly different this year. You might not have noticed, top marks if anyone actually did, in that you can find a remuneration report as part of your packet of information. So we've made this move to show we are compliant with our very own cooperative code of governance. You would normally only see a proposal for board fees at this point, and as shown in the report, these are not being proposed to change this year anyway, as we've shown. So we're asking for an advisory vote, though, on the report at the meeting today. So I won't read out the entire report. There are a few highlights to make, and you can see the information on our approach to remuneration in that report. First thing is to praise the staff, management team, and the new CEO for the impressive work throughout the year. For Remco, the main work we've overseen is the recruitment of a new CEO, continued work on review processes, both on the board and outside that, and we continue to oversee work on pay and reward structures for all staff. So as mentioned, the vote on this is advisory, and I'd like to open for any questions and then we can vote.
Thanks, Ross.
Okay. So thank you, Ross. Ross has proposed the advisory vote on the remuneration report. Does anyone have any questions? Again, please use the Q&A button once again.
Doesn't look like we have any questions on that advisory vote. No, we'll just give it one more second. Okay, we'll assume that there are no questions on Ross's proposal.
Ross, you've done an excellent job. Ross has proposed the advisory vote on the remuneration report. Can I get a seconder, please?
And Mark Simmons has seconded that. Thank you.
Thank you. So the poll, again, will be on screens for you to cast your votes. You have 45 seconds to place your vote. So let me just come up in a second. 45
There we go.
seconds. Thank you.
And that resolution will be closing shortly if everybody has now cast their votes. And we will just collate the results and then they will be shown on screen. And I can confirm that that resolution has passed. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's the last resolution we have for members to vote on tonight. Zena, can you provide an update following the recent director elections and appointments?
I can. So the following directors were reappointed to their seats for another term of office. That is Robin Feith in an uncontested election for the federal seat, Phil Hartwell in an uncontested election for the consumer-owned cooperative seat, Eddie Thorne and Emma Howard in uncontested elections for the consumer-owned retail society seats by region, and Vivian Waddell as appointed by Mid-Counties Cooperative. The seat for consumer-owned retail societies in the Midlands saw a contested election, and the winner of that election was Jane Powell, who has been nominated by Lincolnshire Cooperative, and the vacancies resulting from directors appointed by the Co-op group standing down will be filled by Danny Creek, Lois Hill, and John Boyle.
Okay, thank you. So I would like to express my thanks to outgoing directors, and those are Mary McGuigan, David Stanbury, and Steve Nuttall, all of whom have served on the board of directors and have devoted time and great effort in this difficult but exciting time for the society. You've all brought your experience to the board mix, and I am grateful to you. This is also the last AGM from my predecessor, Nick Matthews. Nick has been on the board for 9 years and served as chair for 6 of those. Nick, you will be sorely missed by the board and in particular me. You have a wealth of co-op knowledge that we've turned to on many occasions, and I'm sure that you'll not mind if I drop you a line every now and again for advice and maybe just a good old co-op chat. So my thanks and best wishes to you. Thanks, members, for attending this year. I hope that in the coming year we'll be able to see even more members attending events online and in person. Thank you. I'll bring the meeting to a close.